Spurs, the great dynasty that no one wants to talk about in NBA history. People often talk about the glory of the Lakers, the brilliance of the Warriors, the powerful dominance of the Bulls under Jordan, or the explosion of the Miami Heat under LeBron. Those are dynasties associated with the spotlight, the outstanding stars, and the history pages written with noise. But there is a team, a dynasty, that quietly entered history in a very different way: the San Antonio Spurs. The Spurs do not like noise. They do not chase big markets, nor do they try to attract superstars with flashy promises. But with their perseverance, intelligence, and unique culture of discipline, they have quietly created an unprecedented series of achievements: 20 consecutive years of winning 50-plus games per season, except for the year of lockout, 5 NBA championships, and becoming a symbol of modern basketball based on sacrifice and teamwork. It was a journey that began in the 1990s when David Robinson, the Admiral, joined the team and quickly put the Spurs back on the competitive map. But everything really changed in '97 when the team hit rock bottom due to injuries and unexpectedly won the #1 pick in the NBA draft. At that time, they selected Tim Duncan, who was not only an excellent player, but also the perfect piece for the philosophy that Greg Popovich was building. Popovich, who had no experience as a head coach in the NBA at the time, built an empire not based on ego, but on collective culture. For him, each player had to be not only good at technique, but also needed to understand team spirit, sacrifice, discipline, and responsibility. The Spurs did not win with beautiful highlights or burning dunks. They won with smooth ball movement, disciplined defense, and each link knowing exactly what they needed to do for the team. That's why Tony Parker, Manu Ginobili, Kawhi Leonard, names that were once doubted, became legends under Popovich. And that's why the Spurs, a small team in a modest market like San Antonio, can make the NBA bow. They may not be the most talked about team in the media, but if you ask anyone who understands basketball about the most sustainable, intelligent, modest, yet effective team of all time, the answer will always be San Antonio Spurs. A great dynasty, and quietly, a commander from the Army, and a city transformed. In 1987, when San Antonio was still struggling to find its way back to the light, they were lucky to have the #1 pick in the NBA draft. And they chose a tall, calm guy, a graduate of the United States Naval Academy, David Robinson, who would later be known to the world as the Admiral. The special thing was that Robinson could not play immediately. He had to complete his 2-year military service. The Spurs waited, not in a hurry, because they believed a person disciplined enough to serve the country would be a solid foundation for any team. And when David Robinson officially took the field in 1980, all that patience paid off. From the bottom to the top, and then stopped in the middle, Robinson did not just play well, he completely transformed the face of the team. In his first season, the Spurs went from a team at the bottom of the table with only 21 wins to 56 wins, one of the biggest transformations in NBA history. He was the MVP, the All-Star, the symbol of professionalism. The Spurs had a strong squad, expectations, and impressive playoff seasons. But no matter how hard they tried, they still couldn't cross the threshold to the NBA Finals. Even with the addition of the rebel Dennis Rodman or great shooters like Sean Elliott, the Spurs still stopped, often before legends like Hakeem Olajuwon or Karl Malone. Robinson's team, as impressive as it was missing something, a missing piece, a special factor. When fate intervened, then came the 1996-97 season, and everything fell apart. Robinson got injured. The team fell apart. The Spurs won just 20 games all season, the worst they have ever seen. But then, in that same dismal season, fate smiled on San Antonio once again. They had the #1 pick in the NBA draft again. And this time, the name they picked, not a prolific scorer, nor a locker room rocker. They picked a quiet guy, good at physics, who preferred swimming to partying, Timothy Theodore Duncan. 2 men, 1 direction. At that time, Greg Popovich was almost unknown in the coaching role. He had been a general manager, but had never led a team in the NBA as a head coach. When he fired coach Bob Hill in the middle of the 1996-97 season, then appointed himself to the hot seat, many people laughed and thought the Spurs were falling into chaos. But Popovich didn't care about that. He knew what he needed, and he knew Tim Duncan was the answer. For the draft, Popovich flew all the way to the Virgin Islands, where Duncan lived, not to test his basketball skills, but to sit on the beach, talk with Duncan about family, life, and how he saw the world. For 3 days, they didn't talk much about tactics. What Pop wanted to understand was Tim's personality. And after those 3 days, he knew Tim Duncan was not just a talent, but a personality that fit the culture he wanted to build. The arrival of an icon and the beginning of a dynasty, Tim Duncan arrived in the NBA without fanfare. No shocking statements, no fur coats, no Hollywood lights. He arrived quietly, bringing with him discipline, composure, and class. In his rookie season, Duncan averaged 21 points, 12 rebounds, 2.5 blocks per game, and helped the Spurs win 36 more games than the previous season, breaking their own record for the biggest comeback. At the end of the season, he won Rookie of the Year, was named to the All-NBA team, and led the Spurs to the playoffs. The Spurs at this time, with the Robinson-Duncan duo, were dubbed the Twin Towers, two giant pillars in the back row, dominating the basket and defending relentlessly. But it was only just beginning. Popovich, with his sharp mind and foresight, understood that the team needed more. The Spurs lacked accurate shooters and versatility on the perimeter. So he recruited Steve Kerr, a three-point specialist, and Mario Elie, a seasoned player. The combination of the Twin Towers and accurate shooters created a complete defensive machine. The 1998-99 season, although shortened by the lockout, the Spurs still led the league, and they not only made the finals for the first time in history, but also won the championship after defeating the New York Knicks 4-1. Duncan became the finals MVP. Popovich, from being doubted, stepped up to the ranks of great coaches, and from there the Spurs way was officially born, a philosophy that was not just about basketball, but about a way of life, a way of thinking, a way of building a sustainable team. The connection beyond the court. No fancy tryouts, no technical stats. Popovich only needed a few days of listening, and he clearly felt Duncan is a man of depth, not fond of showing off, not letting emotions overwhelm reason. Just like Popovich himself, who has spent his entire career pursuing basketball with intelligence, discipline, and humanity, not ego or fame. Tim and Pop are two generations, two people, but with the same ideal. Do good work, sacrifice for the team, put the collective before the individual, starting from the quiet, but solid as a rock. When Duncan wore the Spurs shirt, he didn't make any big announcements. Needless to say, he showed the NBA who he was through every shot, every block, every unwavering run without the ball. Popovich is not the type of coach who screams for attention. Duncan wasn't the type of superstar who would appear on every magazine cover. But they trusted each other completely and built a rare relationship between coach and player. Friendship, respect, and unconditional trust. In Tim's 19 seasons with the Spurs, there was never a scandal. No controversy, no complaints about his role or reputation, just quiet dedication and undeniable effectiveness. The Spurs away, basketball is not for egos. From that foundation, Popovich began to build a philosophy that the world would later call the Spurs way. A simple yet profound philosophy. No one is bigger than the team. Talent must go hand in hand with character. Winning must come from a collective effort. Duncan was the living embodiment of that philosophy. He was willing to share the spotlight with others. He was willing to sacrifice his own points. He was the first to arrive at practice and the last to leave. And so, young stars like Tony Parker and Manu Ginobili not only respected him, but followed him willingly. Spurs never needed anyone to carry the team on their shoulders. They won because everyone was willing to do the smallest part, the best. And so, from Popovich and Duncan, the Spurs way became more than just a philosophy. It became the identity of the entire organization, lasting for the next 2 decades. No need for noise, just efficiency. The 1999 championship was not a grand declaration. It was more like a whisper, but enough to shake the NBA. The Spurs did not race for highlights. No one jumped on the commentary table after each victory. They defended like a cold machine, attacked like flowing water, smooth, precise, no gaps. The Twin Towers Duncan Robinson dominated the area under the basket, while veterans like Mario Elie, Avery Johnson, Steve Kerr kept the perimeter stable. The whole team was like a collective. No one stood out too much, and no one was left behind. The Spurs way does not start with tactics. It starts with people. Many people think the Spurs way is a unique tactical system. But for Popovich, it starts with something deeper, a belief in human character. Talent can be trained, skills can be trained, but character, the spirit of learning, the sacrifice, the honesty, is what Pop prioritizes when choosing players. Duncan is the solid foundation of that system. And because he doesn't ask for special privileges, those who come after him don't dare. Tony Parker, the skinny French kid, Manu Ginobili, the mad genius from Argentina, both became legends, not because they tried to be heroes, but because they learned how to do their jobs in the best way. Humility, the most powerful weapon that no team anticipated. In a league increasingly caught up in numbers and reputation, the Spurs emerged as a paradox. No sensational statements, no sensational transfers. They just won. Repeat. Swiss watch-like. And what tires opponents most is not that they are too fast or too strong. It's that they never make mistakes. No fads, no rush. The Spurs earn respect not because they do too much, but because they do it right, long enough for people to listen. The 1999 ring was not just the start of a dynasty, but the birth of a basketball philosophy, where the value of the individual and the collective comes above all else. That's the Spurs way. Each title, a Spurs way of saying the true value of winning. No season is the same. No championship is the same. But every time the Spurs step up to the podium, people feel the same. Composure, unity, durability. In 2003, when David Robinson entered the final season of his career, Duncan brought him to the dream ending. Not with sparkling highlights, but with chilling consistency, averaging 24.7 points, 15.4 rebounds, 5.3 assists, 3.3 blocks per game in the finals. It wasn't just the MVP of the series. It was the best farewell a teammate could give to the man who had supported him from the beginning. 2005. When the Spirit speaks, that year's finals was a chess war between the two most tactical teams in the league, Spurs and Pistons. Every move was a tense game. No explosions, no noise. Just every point had to be exchanged with sweat and intelligence. Game 7, Tim Duncan, despite being tired, despite being followed like a shadow, still stood firm like a fortress. And Spurs won. Not spectacularly, but enough to make the entire NBA bow their heads. 2007. Quiet but absolute LeBron James was a 22-year-old whirlwind at that time, leading an entire immature team to the finals. But against a team as experienced as Spurs, LeBron could not turn the situation around. Ginobili, Parker, Duncan coordinated like a three-movement symphony, sweeping the Cleveland Cavaliers 4-0. When they won, they did not dance. They just clapped each other on the back, squeezed hands, as if it had all been planned for a long time, very firmly. 2014. When the Spurs turned basketball into art, this was the most complete version of the Spurs way. A year ago, they lost to Miami in a bitter defeat, thanks to Ray Allen's three-pointer. A year later, they were back and left no doubt. The ball flowed like a wave through every defense. 8 different players scored over 9 points per game. None were outstanding, but all were dangerous. They beat a Miami team with LeBron, Wade, Bosh, by doing all the little things right, faster, more precise, more aggressive. Not every victory requires a roar. Sometimes silence is the loudest. Spurs don't need to be admired by the media. They have made the whole league respect them with their stability for nearly 2 decades, something that no dynasty, no matter how powerful, has achieved. No perks, no superstars, just teammates. At Spurs, you can be the MVP, the all-star, the global icon. But when you step into the locker room, you're just a cog in the system. Popovich doesn't talk down to anyone, but he also doesn't let anyone think they're more important than the team. Steven Jackson had his moments of brilliance for the Spurs, but when his ego started to overwhelm the team, Pop didn't hesitate to remove him from the playoff lineup. No fuss, no resentment, just a cold decision for the greater good. And Manu Ginobili, one of the most creative players the NBA has ever seen, could start for any team. But when Popovich suggested he step back to the sixth-man role to keep the second unit in line, Manu nodded without question. He understands. Winning doesn't come from who scores the most points, but from who is willing to do what the team needs. When a coach is not just a strategist, but a guide to life values, Popovich doesn't just teach his players how to defend pick and rolls. He teaches them how to listen, how to argue without losing respect, how to stand up for justice, for the community, and for each other. Many players have left the Spurs for fame, only to come back and admit it taught them to be human before being athletes. Because a truly strong team is one where no one needs to stand out for the team to shine, Tony Parker once said. Here, you don't play to be the best. You play to make the person next to you better. That's the heart of the Spurs way. No spotlight. No one is exempt from responsibility. No one is above the rules. Only people who believe in each other, in the system, in the coach, and go far together without noise. A dynasty ends, but a legacy remains when Kawhi Leonard, the quiet but coolly effective successor, decided to leave San Antonio after irreparable rifts. It felt like the final chapter had closed. No more Duncan, no more Manu, no more Parker. And now Kawhi, the man who was expected to be Duncan 2.0, is also gone. The Spurs are still playing, still making the playoffs, still winning with experience and spirit. But everyone knows the dynasty is over. But what the Spurs left behind goes beyond the numbers. They didn't leave behind the dominance of the Warriors. They didn't create a cultural wave like the Jordan-era Bulls. But they left behind a standard operating model, a standard for stability, and a basketball philosophy based on character and team spirit. They proved that a small market team, without buying a star, could build an empire, that a coach and a player could create something beyond their achievements together. That was an unwavering belief in their core values. Spurs are not just a team. They are the epitome of an ideal organization. In a league where egos are growing, where reputations can be built with just a viral throw or a social media status, Spurs still choose the old path: hard work, humility, and perseverance. And perhaps because of that, they never became the hottest team, but always the most respected. They didn't create a fever. They created respect, something that not every dynasty can do. Kawhi left. Yes, the dynasty ended. But like every great chapter in history, what remains is not the ending, it's the journey. And Spurs' journey from 1997 to 2018 will forever be remembered as a benchmark for quiet greatness. Greatness isn't about the scoreboard, it's about how they live the game. For nearly 2 decades, the Spurs have shown the world that you can win without being the center of attention. You can succeed without swallowing the transfer market. You can build an empire not on the spotlight, but on faith, discipline, and integrity. They don't need to change their philosophy every time the NBA changes. They don't need to rebuild every summer. They just need to do it right year after year to make the ordinary extraordinary. The Spurs way, a legacy that transcends basketball. The Spurs way is more than just a basketball tactic. It's a way of life, a standard for the organization, a reminder that in an increasingly ego-driven world, humility and unwavering commitment still have a place and can win. Although they are no longer at the top, although the golden generation has stepped aside, everyone who has played for the Spurs, from the stars to the bench, carries something immeasurable. Part of the culture, part of the temperament, part of the Spurs. They don't need others to praise them because they know who they are. And perhaps that's what makes the Spurs one of those great unsung dynasties. They never asked for recognition. But by living, by playing, they have left an indelible mark on NBA history. The Spurs didn't just teach people how to win, they taught us how to win. without losing ourselves. And perhaps that is the most lasting glory a team can achieve.